one's rolling?
I don't know if that one's rolling yet. Is that rolling?
Okay, everyone, could I request everyone to either grab a seat or we will get started. Okay, if you haven't grabbed your kuluraikia, the kuluraikia and coffee are out. So grab your coffee, kuluraikia or water, grab a seat, and we'll get started. All right, a few announcements for everyone. This panel will be live streamed and recorded. And the presentation, the slides will be posted after the fact, so if there's any slides you'd like to use in your parishes, you can use them. Let me grab that. We are operating on time constraints because I'm sure it's been a long day for everyone, so we're going to start almost on time and then end at 4:30. It'll give us time for Q&A, and we'll ask if you have questions of the panel to please line up. There's 2 microphones on each side, and we're going to try to leave as much time as possible. All right, one of our objectives was to make this as interactive as possible. There's a lot of interactivity in the room, which is good, I guess, but hopefully people will sit down and then we will get started. I want to introduce the panelists today. So we have a very experienced panel, and the topic we want to cover today is really how do we best engage our youth and bring them closer to the body of Christ. It's very important in today's world. For many of us, our experience is very different from the youth of today, and we have to acknowledge and understand how to best engage our youth and keep them in the church. So we'll talk about the needs and the challenges that youth face today. We'll make sure that how do we best connect our youth with Christ throughout the various stages of their youth and young adult life. And we'll also talk about the resources and programs the Archdiocese has available to help all of you within your parishes. I'm Steve Pappas. I'll be your moderator this afternoon. I'm with the Metropolis of San Francisco. My home parish is St. Anthony in Pasadena, California. And I'm the proud father with my wife Christine of 3 adult children that we raised in the church and we're very proud of. So watching hopefully on the live stream, hello Presbytera Denai, Nico and Sophia. Dr. Anne Bezeridis, or Mitsakos Bezeridis, was unable to join us, but we do have a video that she has put together, so we'll play the video before our panelists come up and do a short presentation. But really the intent today is for us to be in a dialogue, to help one another, again, strengthen the connection of our youth with the church. So Dr. Anne is the Executive Director of the Crossroad Institute, and she's been the Executive Director since 2021. She's the Director of Office of Vocation and Ministry at Hellenic College at Holy Cross. She's been doing that since 2003. And she teaches youth ministry and oversees the certificate in youth and young adult ministry and leadership. And hopefully Dr. Ann is watching also. She's a graduate of Middlebury College, the BA, and then St. Vladimir Seminary with a Master's in Divinity, and a PhD from Boston College. Dr. Ann and her husband, Dr. Vasilios Bezeridis, who is a pediatric cardiologist, have 3 boys and live in Brookline, Massachusetts. Alexis Pappas the new director of the Effective Christian Ministry, or ECM, of the ECM cohort. Before that, she served as a coach since ECM's inception in 2020. She brings a wealth of experience to this discussion and to her work, and a passion for helping our youth. She previously served as a pastoral assistant at her home parish of Holy Trinity, Holy Cross in Birmingham, Alabama. She holds an MBA and a Master's in Health Services Administration from the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And Alexis is married to Peter Pappas for the past 26 years and is a proud mother of their 4 adult children. Father Nico, or Father Nicolaos Tzetzis, or Father Nico, as I've had the pleasure of getting to know Father Nico these past weeks, was born and raised in Syracuse, New York. He grew up attending St. Sophia, a Greek Orthodox church in Syracuse, and he holds a BA in Political Science from Birmingham University and a Master's of Divinity from Holy Cross. After graduation, he went to Rochester. He moved to Rochester, New York, with his presbytera, and with his presbytera Ivy. Father Nico was ordained to the priesthood, and they welcomed their 2 children, Tommy and Elvira, into this world as a family. And now Father Nico is the proestamenos of St. John the Baptist in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And then finally, Eva Konstantakos is the National Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries, better known as Y2AM, for the Archdiocese. She brings to her role over 20 years of experience working across parishes and metropolises. She had served within the metropolis of Detroit as the youth director from 2003 to 2022. So a long time, and now we have her at the Archdiocese. She participated in numerous, again, programs across our Archdiocese and within the metropolis, including campus and college ministries, summer camps, youth training, youth safety, and curriculum development. Eva holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communications from Ball State and a Master's of Theological Studies from Holy Cross. And with that, that is our group. So we will start with the video from Dr. Ann. We'll give each of our panelists an opportunity to present their particular perspectives on youth ministries. And then we really do want to leave time, ample time for Q&A. Because again, our objective here is really make this interactive. There's experiences that you all have from your parishes. There's challenges that you have in your parishes. How can we help one another? Again, with the objective of strengthening our youth's connection to Christ and the church. So, hopefully the audio and all the technical will work here. I tested this 3 times today. It's technology. It worked all 3 times. Just wanted to get the video to play. Victory.
Your Eminence, your Eminences, Reverend Fathers, amazing presbyteras, valiant youth leaders, brothers and sisters in Christ. Hello, my name is Ann Mitzakos-Bezarides. I've been serving as the Director of the Office of Vocation and Ministry at Atlanta College Holy Cross since 2003, and also teach youth and young adult ministry there. I also serve as the Executive Director of the Crossroad Institute. This picture is of me and my husband, who's a pediatric cardiologist and researcher, and our 3 boys. And I want to ask your forgiveness for not being there with you in person. I would love to be. And it is a busy summer. I was actually on Friday in California and just flew back. I was in California for our Crossroad Summer Institute in Northern California. Purpose of Crossroad Institute and the high school summer program in particular is to help young people develop a lifelong Orthodox faith. The Institute, for those of you who don't know, was founded in 2004 at Hellenic College Holy Cross. It's now in 3 locations, 4 different sessions, and our California session, it's for high school juniors and seniors, and our California session has this fabulous West Coast ethos to it. We had Papa George, give a session on life-giving relationships, and His Eminence Metropolitan Yerasimos himself give an amazing session on prayer. Panel of alumni, just beautiful, beautiful humans. 2 of these alums in the picture here are actually at Clergy-Laity. They were at Crossroad in 2004 and 2005. And so by investing in young high school leaders, we are actually building up the future of the church in a very, very real way. And it's an incredible blessing to be involved in. This was my dining room table a week and a half ago. This is the Boston-based crew. We've got two teams of Crossroad staff, and this is the Boston crew. All of them, young adults, 6 different metropolises. Just finished running a session, was having a debrief that night in between sessions. I've been doing this work for about 25 years. It's only recently I've realized how much I need them. I'm investing in them and doing a debrief, and then they're investing in the young people. But more than that, actually so many of them love my boys. They've been, either babysat for my boys or had robust conversations with my boys, or my boys have seen them chant since they were young ages. The one at the grill taught my son biblical Greek. So it's amazing. I will say it's a lot harder now that they're all teenagers than it was when I was closer to their age. I had to whip my 3 boys into shape to get the house ready, to clean up our house, to plan the menu. Gave up my exercise for the day, postponed sending dozens of emails. Not easy having people over when running programs, navigating busy summer schedules of my own children with lots of other life tentacles, and then mix. To do it, I have to keep at the forefront of my mind the eternal work at hand. In following Christ, I'm called to invest in young adults who are not my own, training and supporting them to love the youth of our church. Miraculously, without being the intention, it builds up my own children, my own family. They are helping my children be known and loved and inspired and challenged in and through our church. Crossroad does this on a national level, but this is all so possible at the parish level because it is so simple. We create a parish community of love by loving. Christ loves us. We love others beyond our own family members who aren't our own children, who it doesn't directly benefit our ego or our calendar at all to help in the present moment. We simply love the people, and by the grace of God, they love our people. It's how the church has always done it. And that's how our youth will become engaged in the body of Christ. We have to love beyond our own immediate little sphere, way beyond love young people. Our young people need our time and attention, need us to pull back from our schedules and agendas to be present with and for them. So even more so than it has been before, young adulthood has always been this age-old search of identity, belonging, and purpose. Who am I? Where do I fit? What difference do I make? Now it's so much more challenging because of these increasing complexities, smartphones, artificial intelligence, political culture, questions about their own bodies, the sort of you do you culture. So that young people today are not just navigating, who am I, where do I fit, what difference do I make, but also what is real about the world and what is real about me. So we think of our work as 4 really important spheres of truth. Just briefly, here's a quick image of them, and here they are. That identity, purpose, belonging, and reality are all found in Christ within the context of our tradition. Beautiful, communal, ancient, historic, enfleshed tradition. So know that by engaging young people in the life of the church, that's what you're helping them encounter. Second, our parishes must be the heartbeat of this understanding. I love programs. I love the programs outside of our parishes, but our parishes have to be the heartbeat of this understanding. Physical reality of the local community with real people, fed by communion with a God who is with us, agency and service in and through their parish for the life of the world. Everything our parishes are, their whole person needs. 3, young people need the village, and the village needs to wake up. Helping all of us as adults understand this is at the front line of our work to help engage young people in the life of the church. Kids know they struggle. Kids know they struggle. It's the rest of us who need help focusing on walking them through this. Young people are so very hungry for our in-person attention and inspiring vision. We, of course, are all going to invest in our own kids. Our calling is also to invest in young people who are not our own. And as adults, we become more fully alive and human when we do this. This is when we're building up the body of Christ. And finally, to make our faith theirs for life, young people need to broaden the bounds of the familiar and gain vision for the church and the world. Whatever they're used to in their teenage years, before they leave for college, we have to push that a little bit, push them out of that nest. To see that Orthodoxy is bigger than a local parish or even a local camp. Following Christ is more life-encompassing than a narrow visit to church on Sunday. And the spiritual life as separate from the rest of who they are, but rather it's all life-encompassing. Not an insular vision, but in service to neighbor for the life of the world, an abundant life, joyful life. Quite simply, we have to push them to think bigger, to meet more of the village, to understand the church's purpose in the world. Teens can do this. They can think incredibly sophisticated thoughts. They want to know that their faith is bigger than their local parish. That's how their faith will stick for life. Whatever they're doing in their high school classes, they can do that. When they think about the Orthodox Church in the world, they're ready for this level of engagement. So 4 spheres of truth for developing a lifelong Orthodox faith. Identity, purpose, belonging, reality are all found in Christ in the Orthodox Church and tradition. Parish must be the center of that. It's time to wake up the village. We all need the village. We all need, for every one of our children, they need 5 mentors. What if we thought about the way we raised our children, that each young person, not only our own, but all of them in our churches, had 5 mentors? What happens when we think about that? And then finally, a breadth of and a vision for the church and the world. 2 little things to leave you with, questions for action. What's the next little thing that you can do to invest in young people who aren't your own? It literally could be one unhurried conversation with one young person after liturgy next Sunday. It could be a meal at your home for young adults and invite the priest or others. My high school Sunday school classmate reminded me that my dad took him out to lunch when he was in college to talk about career options. One next little thing can make a huge difference in the life of a young person. And then second, what are the strategies your parish can try in order to wake up and energize the village? Talk to each other while you're here about what's working in your parishes. Talk to youth and young adults at your parish to design something that they would love. Better yet, get them to design it. And overall, just a little moment of encouragement to end off. Young people are looking for a people and a place to belong to. And whether or not they find those people and that place in our parishes will largely depend on the rest of us.
Alexis?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Pappas, and I'm a recovering youth worker. I'm here today because I had no control over my addiction to getting kids to come to things, and as many of them as possible, and I had no power over their parents. Through effective Christian ministry, my parish and I are learning how to turn youth events into youth encounters. In 2009, I was hired as the pastoral assistant in my local parish, planning ministry for Generation Z. Generation Z is anyone born between 1997 and 2016, and this was intended to be a 6-month job. I was armed with spreadsheets and flyers and calendars and the dreaded announcement after Divine Liturgy. I was great at advertising, getting people to volunteer, host in their homes, teach. My evenings were spent texting, emailing everyone and anyone who was young or able to assist. I was a bloodhound at Coffee Fellowship. I could sniff you out and make sure you were bringing your cousins and all your friends to the next Goya meeting. And the parents loved me because I was so detailed, and I planned and had constant communication with them. But after 12 years, I walked away wondering if I ever made a difference. And thank God we did do a lot of wonderful things, but it wasn't until I took the Effective Christian Ministry course that I myself was changed as a youth worker and a mom. And part of the course is helping all of us understand the unique challenges of today's youth and today's culture. One unique challenge that I'd like to talk to you about today is loneliness. There's a wonderful book out today called The Anxious Generation, and in that book he graphs the feeling of loneliness for young people. And if you look at my slide, between those years that I was a youth worker, loneliness increased from 28 to 38% for girls. That meant 4 out of 10 of the girls in our youth group were often feeling lonely. For boys, it was a little less dramatic, from 19 to 29%. When I started seeing these numbers, it answered the question that I was asked every time I said, "Are you coming to Junior Goya? Who is going to be there?" That was my loneliness clue. If your Junior Goya is merely a peer group planning events, it is going to feel as lonely as school, soccer, dance, or debate. And in peer groups, the biggest fear is being left out. Because in a peer group, the fittest survive, and the ones that feel different get pushed aside. It's like a pack. And if your Junior Goya is merely an event with other Junior Goyans, it's going to feel as awkward, as lonely, and as uncomfortable as the junior high locker room. Here's an example of how we address loneliness in our parish. After COVID, Father Micah wanted to get the Junior Goyans together. And so we were going to spread out in the banquet hall and call the shut-ins. Now don't forget, I'm a youth activist, and so the thought of gathering Junior Goyans in our cavernous banquet hall to actually use a phone to call somebody that they don't know seemed like the worst idea I could have ever come up with. But I went along with it. And the boys, here's a little, these are some of the kids that came. So one was very shy, and it was clear that his mom had made him come. The other two were our senior priest's grandchildren who come to everything. So Father Micah lovingly explained the activity and checked in with the boys, and they started looking at the list, and they recognized names on the list, and they said, "That's my Nuna, that's my Yaya, that's the man in the altar." And so for about an hour, they actually connected verbally with the shut-ins in our parish. At the end of the night, their faces lit up, and they said, "When can we do this again? If you had told me On Tuesday, that 3 boys were coming on Sunday, I might have suggested that you reschedule. You see, I'm a good event planner, but if you're planning an encounter, it was a big win, and for many reasons. If you suffer from loneliness, that night you got to connect with your priest. You also got to connect with 2 other boys that you may not know very well. And the ripple effect is the person you called was also no longer lonely, and he or she is bound to check in on you later. So in effective Christian ministry, it's not just about the young people, it's about changing the whole parish. Now, I know from experience that loneliness is the epidemic of Generation Z, and it literally has become life or death for them. But God's family can be the antidote to that. To love, to forgive, to bear burdens, to speak truthfully, to care for others. This is what God's family is called to do. In one parish I coached, they continue to have their monthly Goya meetings. But in between meetings, 2 young adults would take the high school girls to breakfast. And the one male advisor would take the boys to lunch on Saturday. So they were making room for encounters in between their bigger Goya events. In our own parish, we noticed there was a lack of engagement in the Hope and Joy group. And we realized that all the parents were not very connected. So our youth director decided to plan a Hope Joy parent check-in simultaneously with the Hope Joy event. And this was very easy with some get-to-know-you breakout cards. But we could start to see how they were joining in as a community alongside their kids. When you join the ECM cohort, you commit to 9 months to not creating a new program, but actually being transformed. And for example, you will write your own reflection on loneliness. You will plan an applied project that addresses loneliness in your parish. And there are other 4 big challenges to Generation Z that will change the way you approach ministry, but you'll have to take the course to find out. Until then, I want to share with you a recent Junior Goya event. The plan was for the Junior Goya girls to meet with some young adult advisors for dinner. And again, only 2 showed up. They talked, they ate, they walked for ice cream. When the young adults got home, they told our youth director it was the best Junior Goya meeting we had ever had because we really got to know the girls. These young adults are now being transformed by serving Christ through serving these young people. Thank you.
If we're starting with confessions, then I'm starting with, I was a Sunday school dropout. I, for whatever reason, really never connected with the ministry, and I probably stopped going somewhere 7th, 8th grade. Really wasn't reflective of my involvement in the parish otherwise. There was just something about Sunday school classrooms that didn't resonate with me, but to talk a little bit about my childhood experience is to really reflect on what healthy ministry can look like in a parish. My name is Father Nicolaos. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and that's where I'm going to start the conversation because in Syracuse, I grew up at a church that had a bit of a unique setup. So the church in Syracuse, New York is actually in one of the prominent East Side suburbs. It's in a very good school district. All of my cousins and friends, we all went to the same school. And we all lived close enough to the church to walk there. So I was up the hill. My friends, the priest kids, were down at the bottom of the hill. They were across the street from the church. I'm sure some of the clergy here are cringing at the thought of a parish house across the street from the church, but you know, it actually worked really well for us. Another, now priest, lived down the street, and then there were a number of other Orthodox church friends that lived right there in the neighborhood, right all around. We could all walk to the church within a minute or two. I always get the stories about when, you know, kids started driving and taking themselves to church. Maybe some of them that really were into church started going early. We did that from very young because I didn't have to wait for my parents. I just walked down the back hill and got to church from like 8 years old and on. So we'd all meet there, and that was our central place. Because our friends were priest kids, they had the key to the church and they had the code, so we'd let ourselves in and play basketball. We were so close to each other and to the church that, and this is one of my favorite little stories, there's one day I'm outside in the backyard, I'm mowing the lawn, and I'm listening to With Arms Wide Open by Creed on my headphones, and I am belting this at the top of my lungs as if my neighbors don't exist. And after I finish mowing the lawn, I go inside, I look at my computer in my room, and there's a new instant message, and it's from one of my friends who's down the hill, and she said, "You're singing so loud the whole neighborhood can hear you." This is how close we all grew up. But it wasn't kids being close that wasn't really what formed us. It's not that, oh, we kids had friends, so if everyone just moves close to their church and makes a little koyo, you'll have a healthy youth ministry. It's not realistic, and that's also not what it was. What it was is that we kids were friends, and our parents all became friends. And when we were friends and our parents were friends, we'd all get together all the time, living close enough to do it. It wasn't an official ministry, but we'd show up at church, at each other's houses. So much so that we knew the garage code to each other's houses, and we just open it up without even knocking or asking. Poking our head in, saying, "Everyone good?" And what would happen is, we kids would do what kids do. We'd play video games. We'd shoot each other with Nerf darts. We'd run around the backyard, we'd play football, we'd do all these other things. I wouldn't say that we had like Goya meetings at the house, not at all. But when we got together, our parents got together. When our parents got together, they talked about a life of faith because they had access to the priest. And the parents would ask questions and challenge norms, and they were close enough to one another. They loved each other deeply enough, but they could really say whatever they wanted to each other. So there was one parent at one point who chimes in and says, "Father, you know what? This whole forgiveness thing, I'm not really for it. I don't get it. I mean, someone wrongs me, they can go. They can leave me alone. I don't really have any interest in that." And it wasn't the priest who sits there and now is, no, you have to because, no. He knew to bide his time. He knew to wait. One of the other parents chimes in. "Oh, you know you can't say that." Was it you can't say that or you can't believe that? And the conversation ensues. The adults start talking to one another, talking about the value of forgiveness, talking about the forgiveness of our God that leads us to forgive. And at the end of all that conversation, the parent who had the wrong opinion in this case, he maintained it. But they talked about it, and he wasn't ready to give it up. And that's where it stayed. And we kids, as we'd run inside to get some chips or run inside to get something to drink, we'd hear the parents going back and forth on these conversations, and we kids would say, "Man, they're really taking this seriously. All right, who's up next?" Because we kids, we're still just kids. We're children. As many of us have ended up going off to the seminary, as many of us has got involved in the church in various ways, we were kids and behaving like kids, and we saw adults doing what adults do. So what do adults do? Because this is the big question I've been considering about youth ministry, and lately, what I've been saying is youth ministry really is a byproduct of adult ministry. If you have adults who are taking their faith seriously, the kids are going to see that adults take this seriously, and what do kids want to do? They want to be like adults. Not their own parents. We never want to be like our own parents. But I want to be like everyone else's parents. Everyone else's parents are awesome. My parents, they make me do things I don't want to do. So we emulate other people's parents. And when we see other people's parents talking about their faith as something that isn't contrived, it's not, we're in the church now, we have to talk about church things. This is important to me. This is at the core of who I am. I want to understand who this God is that I was raised saying, yes, 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 follow God. I want to know who this God is. And Father, you're here, let me ask you the question. When they grapple with that, the kids realize this is actually important to them. It's the same issue we run into today with schools and all kinds of other programs where, what do? You come home with a math problem, your parents say, I don't know about all that. Math, I left that behind when I finished, geometry in 10th grade. How often we write off math, or why don't you guys learn how to balance a checkbook? That's a real skill. It's just arithmetic, it's not hard. And if you still took math seriously, you'd realize that, of course you can balance a checkbook, that's easy math. But what do we do as parents, as adults? So often we downplay the disciplines we're subjecting our children to as things that are, those are kids' things. What did you learn today in Sunday school? Wait. Who was Noah? Which one was he? Was he the well? Was he? We as parents often teach our kids, we as adults often teach our kids that the things they do don't really matter. Yes, you have to do Sunday school right now because you're a kid and that's what kids do. And when you get older, you're going to stand in the liturgy and you're going to look at your watch and show up late enough that it's not going to be noticeable, not the latest, you don't want to be the latest, but you're going to show up late so that you're not there for too long, and sometimes you'll receive communion, sometimes you won't. Why? But you're going to go to Sunday school. That sense we have that we can raise kids when we have adults that are kind of about a life of faith is where we're taking that wrong turn. Because ultimately, a parish full of adults who take their faith seriously will yield faithful children. There's no doubt in my mind that that's exactly how they're formed. So we as kids, what did we start to do as the years went? We started to have our own conversations. So we'd sit around the campfire and we'd pretend we were our parents. I remember one of the conversations was between me and another one of my friends who's now a priest. It was, if God is perfect love and there's perfect unity in the kingdom, can we really have unique relationships with people, or are they all just kind of flattened into love? And then what's the point of this life we live if all we have at the end is love and nothing we ever did mattered because it's all just love at the end? And it was kids doing pretend philosophy. But we sat around the campfire and we thought about things. Some of them were silly, some we thought were deep and weren't that deep. Some of them were actually pretty deep and only really can be answered as we're older. And of course, when we brought these questions to Father Tom, it was usually, don't worry about that, let's talk about something else for now. Knowing full well we just weren't old enough yet, but we're grappling. And we saw the adults grappling, so we knew it was important to do. And we moved on. I now moved to a parish some years later. I'm now assigned to a parish that's has a very large youth ministry. And this community was largely fostered in the same way. That same sense of, I'm here, I'm present with your parents, we love you kids, and what you're going to see among the parents is this good faith effort toward Christ, this good faith grappling with faith, and for the kids, have fun. Now please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying all kids need to do is have fun. I think every parent knows their own kids need to be challenged. But in general, we set the example by challenging ourselves. So this community saw the priest set their example for them for years, saw the other adults in the community set the example, and the children fell in line. Ultimately, this is the village model of ministry. This is the living room model of ministry. The idea that we would come together in that common space where kids, go ahead, be kids. Don't worry. Because if the adults are there, the adults are actually grappling with things, I'm not talking about having a Bible study at the same time as kids are playing. I'm talking about their adults. If their adults, the ones they look up to and want to be like, are there grappling with matters of faith while they're throwing around a football, they're going to see that. And eventually it's going to be, what are those adults talking about? Why do they always get in these heated arguments? Why are they always going back and forth about what they believe and don't believe? How is it, as time goes, how is it that that adult doesn't believe that? They grapple. It becomes authentic. And the village of faith is formed. So this is what I'm excited to talk about. This is something I've been talking about now, and I've made a few presentations on this idea that youth ministry truly is a byproduct of adult ministry. If we have adults, not just the select few that are Bible study all-stars, but if your parents, the ones who keep telling you, Father, we just need more basketball, fine, the kids can play, you're going to come here and talk to me then. If we realize that the adults are where ministry starts, the parents, the ones who set the tone, the ones who set the priorities, if we realize that's where ministry starts, we will have, as a beautiful byproduct, children who follow the same path. And ultimately, we'll be living the inheritance we received from the saints who have passed down this faith from generation to generation, lifting up those who preceded them, who walked that path toward our God in good faith. May God give us all the strength to go ahead and follow that example, leading it ourselves as adults, knowing our children will follow.
Thank you, Father Nico. I have no confessions for you, I'm sorry. The only confession that I have for you is that I'm one of the lucky ones, I believe. I know that many of our young people struggle, and we see our churches empty and void of some of our young people. But I was one of the few who, if we didn't get to church, my home church, my home parish, Holy Trinity Cathedral in now Carmel, it used to be in Indianapolis, Carmel, Indiana. We lived 45 minutes to an hour away from church. My parents both worked, and sometimes it was 6 or 7 days a week. So Yayan Papu maybe would take us to church. Or if we didn't get to go to church that Sunday, we were lighting incense at the home and we were saying our prayers. So what I want to tell you is I'm one of the lucky ones, because engaging the youth in the body of the church for me meant that I had people in my life, as we've all said, who have modeled what it means to grow in the faith and to grow in Christ. So one of the things as a Metropolis Youth Director and now as the National YTOM Director for our Archdiocese, which is an incredible honor and blessing, is that time and time again I'm asked the question, why are our young people falling away from the church? And it's very easy for us to point the finger outwardly, right? Oh, it's because of sports. It's because we're overscheduled. It's because we don't have enough in our budgets to do this and that and whatever. Our kids aren't engaged, they're in technology, yada, yada, yada. And how many of you know the saying, what happens when you point a finger out? Right, I see it. 3 are pointing back at you, right? Anytime I write a sermon, I always write saying, Eva, what do you need to learn this week? Because it's really about self-reflection. And so when we hear the question, why are our young people falling away from the church, we have to ask 2 questions. Are we truly addressing the needs of our youth? And are we modeling what it means to be a committed Orthodox Christian? Because half of the time, I get, again, not only why are youth falling away from the church, Eva? Because our churches are dying. Our churches are dying. And so then I asked the question, which this book, as I have up here, called Practicing Passion, Youth in the Quest for a Passionate Church, this quote hit me in the gut. And this is what I want to tell people every time when they say our churches are dying. And they think that getting the youth back will help revive them. And so I remember this quote. And it says, are we who we say we are? Do we practice passion transformed by a love who never disappoints, and live by a faith so convincing that we stake our lives on it? Or are we just another sagging social convention like Dracula that needs young blood to survive? In other words, are we looking to make sure that our youth are engaged so that we have people to work the festivals? Are we worried? I saw chuckles. Are we worried about that so we have Sunday school teachers, or that we have a choir that we love so much? Or are we worried about making sure that the kingdom that has been prepared for us is populated by his children? All of us. Them and us. And so, spoiler alert, only one thing is needed, right? And like I said, we have to point back at ourselves and we think about this image. When you and I are very busy being Martha and doing all of these things we think are important in our communities, we need to remember the one thing that's important. Our young people need to see us at the feet of Christ as Mary. They do need to see us as Martha. They do need to understand that certain things take preparation, right? They need to see that there's planning and there's bill paying and we've got to organize all these things in budgets. But the first thing they need to see is that we are being Mary at the feet of Christ. And so when we look at our youth groups, we need to think about it in that way. We also need to think about it in a different way, is that we need to be doing this not just for ourselves, but we also need to make sure that we are doing it with them. Our goal for youth groups is not just to have numbers to create nice kids. Oh, look at those nice Orthodox kids. Or typically, oh, those nice Greek kids, right? But oh, look at those nice Orthodox kids. Or oh, look how many young people we had in our program. My brothers and sisters in Christ, numbers don't matter, right? Because as we're saying, these young people are falling away from the church. We look at the young adult movement, actually, as we've talked about, right? Those of you who are back in the big YAL days, right? Where'd they go? We had 2,000 people. And this is important, and it was a wonderful thing. But in my opinion, if we have 300 young adults who spend their money and come to a young adult conference, or these young people sacrifice everything else and come to be with one another, that is impactful, and we have a responsibility to feed them spiritually and to make an impact and to help model that growth. Young people must practice with us together. Okay, so how we model that is we don't just do it, but we say, come next to me and be at the feet of our Lord. Come with me to serve. Come with me to be a part of the fellowship and not just let the kids, feel like they need to be sequestered. We do a lot of that in our churches, my brothers and sisters. We separate them off because we think they don't want to be with us when in fact they do. Right? Have you ever been where all the grown-ups, you're having a special dinner, maybe Thanksgiving or whatever, and all the kids have to go sit at the youth table and they're like, oh gosh, do we have to? Can't we sit with you guys? Right? Especially as they get older, they want to be with us. They want to be impacted and they want to be seen. Please don't forget that our young people want to be seen. One young adult, we had done a focus group many, many years ago in the metropolis of Chicago, and we asked, why did you choose the church that you went to? And she said, honestly, it had been really difficult, but I went to a church for the first time that I had never been to, and I went up to the priest to receive a blessing, and the priest said, she goes, without knowing me, I knew that he did not know me, said, we are so glad you're here this evening. To be seen and to be noticed. I look at our ministries and I want to go back to this idea that we need to practice together. Think about our young people and when they're about to get their driver's license, right? We don't just let them take the test and then say, okay, you get to move on. What do they have? They get their learner's permit, and then you adults have to be the brave folks who sit in the car with them, but you let them take the wheel, right? So you're sitting there white-knuckled, nervous about what could possibly happen, But you have the bravery, and you have the guts, and you have the trust that they have done their job and you've done their job, and you let them take the wheel. So what I'm telling you here today is, please, in your communities and in your churches, let them take the wheel in your parishes. The way to engage them is to not just model it, but model it with them. You are on a path of spiritual growth as well. I mean, if you haven't figured out, please come and tell me the secret. I do not have it figured out. But the reality is that we're all working towards salvation, and they need to see that, and we need to be able to do that together with them. So just like we sit in the car with that learner's permit driver, we need to let them take the wheel and be a part of that. So, the real purpose of me coming up here, I just wanted to give a few things that impact me when I hear, what do we do about our young people falling away from the church? And one of the goals of Y2AM is to create resources and tools and things for you to feel supported so that you can engage the youth of your communities. So one of the things that Alexis had spoken about, I'm so very grateful that she is on our team as our ECM cohort director, is Effective Christian Ministry. Effective Christian Ministry is our official ministry training program. Please do not think that you have to have a super dynamic, charismatic, out there, entertaining the kids youth worker. What young people need is authenticity. One of the most impactful adult youth interactions I've ever seen was an 80-year-old priest sitting in a chair, just like the image before with Christ and Mary. And he had teenagers who were too cool for school for the rest of the retreat. But at that moment, he had them captured because he was being himself and he was loving them. And the children were sharing about themselves with him, and they were loving him. He wasn't setting himself on fire. He wasn't showing all the coolest things on social media. He was just being a genuine human being, receiving them as genuine human beings. So Effective Christian Ministry talks about what our young people are dealing with and how we can be there with them in their challenges, and how the church, specifically, not just our opinion, but how the ancient church, our ancient faith, addresses those issues through the practices of our faith. I realize, having worked in ministry for over 20 years, that many of you who do youth ministry are volunteers. And you might not have gone to the theological school. So we recognize that you all need resources to be able to engage in these conversations so that you can be in these relationships with your young people. So we are developing things like a Goya ministry plan. If you know, the Y2AM department has created a ministry plan in the past. We're getting back to that, a full year of curriculum so that you have things for every month to discuss with activities, discussion questions, and ways for them to reflect and ways for you to share. We also are looking into the revitalization of Be the Bee 2.0, because I know many, many, many people who've said that those videos have sparked conversation and also have been educational, as you said, Father Nico, for the parents. The parents were having conversations about it. And so we want to spark that conversation. So it's not just something that happens in Sunday school, which doesn't happen as often as it should be. It also happens in the little churches of your homes. Last but certainly not least, I have two more things. One is our young adult ministry. The reality is formation doesn't end when they leave high school. Formation continues. The world is a different place than when I was a young adult. And so young adult ministry is very important, and we're doing our part at Y2AM to not only support YAO ministry with a conference, which, as you all know, the conference for this year is starting just tomorrow. All of them are coming in, and we have young people from all over the US and Canada, young adults who are come together in faith and fellowship and service and worship. So we're very excited that they're going to be here, but also young adult ministry in general. So it's not just about conferences, but what happens when they go back home, and making sure that there are resources to get those young adults engaged so that they can then be people who are mentors and who are modeling growth to our young people. So again, I don't want, by the way, if you're parents and you feel like I've attacked you today, I promise I'm not attacking you. This is a whole community call out, right? Last but certainly not least, I have camping ministries on this list. If you have not been any type of familiar with camps, our camping ministry programs, I have to tell you that our camps are one of the most beautiful and perfect examples of this Orthodox Christian community for a camper, for a young person, because at camp, they're the ones that worship, and they're the ones that are chanting, and they're the ones that are serving. At camp, they're the ones that are cleaning the tables, they're the ones that are cleaning up their bunks, they're the ones that go and serve their counselors. At camp, the discussions are focused on them. And they're focused on these young people, and they get to meet young people from all over the place. And our priests, who are commonly tied up in parish council meetings and Philoptochos gatherings, which are all very valuable. Those of you, again, please don't get mad at me, okay? But our young people, if we're talking about engagement, and the one person who is meant there to be that guide and that spiritual guide and that mentor can't do that, that's a difficult thing. Without our community, without our priests, we don't have a community. And so camp offers the undivided attention of the priest, who can talk about faith and also destroy them in dodgeball, right? Okay. So our camping ministries also, we support through the National Y2AM office, the Office of Camping Ministries, and we do what we can to help support our camps to make them even more incredible, to support our young people and to support adults who come and volunteer at our camps and who are staff members as well. I would love to talk with you about what Y2AM has. We do have our booth here. Obviously, Alexis is here. And we're very grateful that you all chose at the end of the day to come and hear about how to engage our youth. The last thing I'll tell you is engaging our youth really means we need to engage you and me, right? So we have to reflect on ourselves and what we can do to better live out our faith to help engage our young people in the body of Christ. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. All right, we're tracking well on time. I'm going to pose a question to each of our panelists. If I could ask just a rapid fire response, because I want to leave 30 minutes for everyone. I think of all the ministry panels we've had today, we've never gotten through the questions that have come up to the mic. So I'm going to start to warm up the panel. Please, I welcome anyone and everyone to come to the microphones and ask your question, and just as importantly, share the experiences of your own parish and your own community. And I think it was said earlier, coming together here at the Congress gives us the opportunity to share and understand from one another. And there's some incredible things going on across the Archdiocese. So let me get a few of the quick rapid fires in. And Alexis. So you mentioned the four challenges, but Alexis only teased us with one, which was loneliness. And as much as I was trying to get the other four out, I'm sorry, there's 5 challenges. I was trying to get the other 4 out of Alexis. She won't divulge all 4 because she wants us to embrace the ECM program. But could you give us a couple more to give us the flavor of what the challenges are for our Gen Zs and our youth?
I'm sorry.
You're not gonna give us any. I know.
So, I'll give you 2. Doubting that our church really has answers to them that really can change their lives. And I was using my phone. Self-preoccupation. If you look on that graph of loneliness, when it really started to go up was when the share button was introduced and the camera was able to turn around. And so that self-preoccupation, doubt, and loneliness are the top three challenges of young people today. You have to take the course to figure out the other 2.
All right. Thank you, Alexis. Father Nico, I love the concept of the village, and you talked about your experience in your youth, but really bringing together the home family or the home living room with the church family and their church living room. Can you talk about how should we be doing that? How do we bring the home family with the church family?
So, I think it's really important to say that while it's a blessing to be able to have things literally in the homes, the way our priests are limited with time, I think the goal of trying to get into all homes and build that relationship with all families is impossible. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that the church itself, you know, we have this issue a lot of times in our churches where we get so excited to bring in more revenue or whatever it is that we schedule, we start to rent them out. But this is something we've been dealing with at my parish the last couple of years. We've been talking about it. You know, it's not been a contentious thing, it's just, what do we do with this hall? Because we have a beautiful hall, and could we potentially get a caterer who would take it over? And something that I've talked about, and really taking the cue from my predecessor, it's that sense that that hall is that living room, that after the worship of the liturgy, we come into that space and we spend time together. The kids at St. John run, like they run in packs. You just see them running in circles during coffee hour, because the adults have conversations to have, and like, they'll take care of each other. The kids will be fine, right? This is very much my predecessor. Like, leave the kids, let them have fun. We've got conversations to have. But that space, the more we can do in it, or I extended a little further. At summer camp last week, we bought a puzzle. And we sat there just making a puzzle, because the thing about when you build a puzzle is everyone starts crowding to you and they all want to find the piece that matches in the puzzle. And all of a sudden you've got like 9, 10 campers crowded around you looking for pieces of the puzzle, and then all of a sudden someone thinks of a question and they throw a question in, and very casually it starts to become a very real conversation. So anything we can do to build those opportunities for non-programmatic interaction in those spaces that can feel so disarming, a meal at the church, building a puzzle, you know, with a priest, that kind of stuff, it really gives that sense of family interaction.
Wonderful. Thank you, Father Nico. And Eva and even Father Nico touch on camps. The magic that happens at our camps. So Eva, how do we take that camp experience at Camp Magic and bring it back into our parishes and communities? I don't think we have too many kids, you know, bussing tables or serving food to our seniors, but how do we extend that camp experience back home?
That's loud, sorry. I forget that I project sometimes. That's an excellent question. I call it the Pascha effect sometimes when they go to camp. Like we're all so pumped about Pascha, right? Christos Anesti, it's great, we're so excited, and then it just fades, right? Same thing with camp. We bring them to the mountain, they have this extraordinary experience, and then at home, their parish, there's nothing there. And so what we have to do is a couple of different things. One, I think, at least in my experience as a camp director for several years and as a youth director now, that one of the things we need to do is make sure that parents and adults are actually involved in the camps so that they have that experience as well, right? Because they come to camp, they don't quite get it, and then I've had parents who say, "What did you do to my child?" Literally, that was told to me, by the way, in those words. "What did you do to my kid?" I'm like, could you clarify? I'm like, "Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Eva. You were yelling at me and I don't know why." So they said, "Well, my child wants to sing this song right before we eat now all the time." And I'm like, "Oh, you mean the prayer that we sing from the Orthodoxy that we sing before every meal?" "Yes, that's something that we have in our church." "I'm sorry that they made you pray before your meal." That's what we do, right? So, but when they, thank you, when they come to the camp though, and when they experience it, even if they volunteer for a day or two, and they see it, so bridging that gap so they can experience it is number one. Number two, I do think that because they have these moments, you know, what you're talking about, what Alexis talked about, that experience, you know, they are experiencing God and they're experiencing one another. And so this is why we're trying to get our parishes to enhance those engagements and those opportunities and those encounters at the church. And it could be as simple as you said, sitting at coffee hour, hanging out with the kids, doing something that you didn't really expect would actually create that connection. Intergenerational ministry. One of the camps that I used to run had a 73-year-old retired police officer who during Camp Hide and Seek climbed a tree, and I thought to myself, at my age, I would have broken something. But people think, why would a 73-year-old want to be a staff member? And I say it made a huge impact on the camp because it wasn't just young adults who are incredible, but it was a whole real picture of what the Orthodox community is. So the short answer is come to camp and check it out and offer your gifts and talents, but also find ways to then make those camp experiences back at the church, whether it's a day of camp activities where you run a full schedule, or you have some of those camp clergy get together and do your Lenten retreat and gather them together again so they have that experience, but the parish now gets to see that experience versus vice versa.
Thank you, Eva. I know we've got some questions or comments, so please feel free to come up to the mic and share experiences, questions.
Question is with regards to the ministry plans. I think around 2015, 2016, 2017, there were Hope and Joy ministry plans, and then those stopped for a while. I saw that there were Goya ministry plans as part of the resources. Are there any plans to bring back Hope and Joy ministry plans as well?
For this year, no, we're focusing on Goya. I just, in the last few months, was very blessed to add a resource coordinator to our team. And so once we get this Goya curriculum out and our ministry plan, then we will focus on, we will get to that point. Because we do want it to be holistic and we want the whole church to be learning the same thing, right? Because part of this, we've talked about this too, is we need to make sure that our parents are learning the same things or at least hearing the same things as their young people are. So the short answer is, not this year, but it is on our docket to make sure that we have a very full age group plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Alexis, maybe, could you just give us a little bit more detail on what is one committing to if one signs up for the effect? Maybe you answered this already. Did you give a detailed, like how many hours a week? What are we talking? How many people do you need to have from your parish that sort of commit the who, what, when, where, why, and how of doing one of these modules?
Thank you, Father. It's really two parts, Father. The first part is the course, and that's about a 5-hour online course that anyone in the parish can take and everyone should take. This will identify the needs of today's youth and today's culture. The part 2 of that is to apply to be in a cohort, and each cohort begins in September of the calendar year. In a cohort, you would take about 5 ministry leaders that have already taken the course who want to commit to 9 months of training with a coach, and they would work together with the coach through the 9 months to develop a 1-year ministry plan. So it's about a 2-hour commitment per week for the team, and each month you would cover one of these themes: the challenge of doubt, the challenge of loneliness, the challenge of self-preoccupation. Praying together, working on applied projects, and then eventually your coach would come visit your parish and help you create a 1-year ministry plan that meets the needs of your parish.
Price?
$1,750
Per person?
per team.
Mr. Silas, please, if you can, announce your name, your parish, your city.
Sure. Steve Simas, St. Anna's, Sandy, Utah. So, the question that I'm going to ask,
Could you do me a big favor? Yes, speak closer to the mic so I can hear your question. I'm sorry.
sorry about that. So the question I'm going to ask is going to be interspersed with a bunch of kind of innuendos probably. I just want to emphasize, I don't know what I'm talking about on this, other than the fact that I have 2 teenage boys, 16 years old. And my wife and I, this is very important to us. Because we want to make sure we not only raise them Orthodox, but they stay Orthodox. So, if you think about our kids, they're the only group that doesn't come to find us. If you are a cradle Orthodox, you're there already. If you're a convert, you found Orthodoxy and you come to a parish. Our kids are there because we make them come, for the most part, right? So, and I agree that our kids today are very smart and just do dumb things sometimes. So, and you mentioned that, you know, that fight with the steering wheel. So the way I look at it is, before you can have that fight, they have to want to take that steering wheel, right? There has to be a want to have that fight. So based on that, I just want to know how, to this group, how important is it to initiate real world issues that all of our kids have, and how do we engage them in dialogue within the church structure relating back to Orthodoxy, right? Because they're all facing issues as teenagers that I never faced before, right? They're with social media, everything that's coming at them, and being so smart, you know, how do we make sure that we're answering all their questions and relating it to Orthodoxy, to make Orthodoxy relative to them in their life so that they stay interested?
Yeah. The first thing I'll say is, really quickly, I thank you for, thanks for listening. I heard the steering wheel thing. You know, the reality is, and I like that comparison, because it's more about when we talk about engaging in the community, right? We just think them sitting in the pew, they hear the hymns, whatever. That's not what, at least that's not what I mean by engaging in the body of Christ. And so our young people do want to grab the steering wheel of their faith. I do believe that. I think that some of them are scared. I think that some of them have been burnt by the parents are like, get out of here, you can't do this. It's happened to me. I'm a grown woman, okay? And I've had people, my parents' age, who are like, you guys don't know what you're doing, you young generation. I'm like, I'm not young. You know, so it's that kind of idea of we're not ready to let you take the steering wheel. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but I think that ultimately our young people do want to take the wheel. I think there's some fear, or maybe even just some being hurt by the fact that they really want to and not been given the opportunity. So your question is, how do we start to address the real issues that they're facing today? And my challenge to you would be that we think that social media is the problem. Social media is a tool that where all of these problems, because the problems that social media is lifting up, which is, you know, being picked on or bullied, or that need to have that attention, you know, seeking attention, that's not new. It's just a new tool, and quite frankly a little scary because it's so large. That's the difference. But, you know, we had people who would bully you and shove you in a locker, or pick on me for being the only Greek kid in, you know, a little hometown like 40 minutes north of Indianapolis. You know, like those things happen. They were just a little different. So what I would challenge us to do is not get caught up in the way it's happening. But again, and I think not to make this a total sales pitch, but when we talk about the real challenges of our young people, that at the core, when you look at those challenges, you'll see, oh, that's a challenge that's exacerbated by social media, exacerbated by the news about politics and all the other things. It's not because of those things, those are the root core issues. And all I say is, parents, prepare yourselves and then have the conversation. Invite the conversation. Right. Right.
And that's exactly it. I mean, to kind of piggyback that and what I was talking about a little bit earlier, as adults, I think it's really important for us to grapple with what we can relate to in what they're going through. You know, what is social media use now? Social media use is largely trying to stay on trend. That's not foreign to us. We're trying to stay on trend. It's getting angry at things the other person's doing. Our generations are worse at that, arguably, than the kids are. I've seen far more of our generations getting involved in online arguments around this, that, or the other thing. So we can definitely relate to it, and we can talk amongst ourselves about those same passions that drive us. passions, you know, that they're looking at, you know, whatever they're looking at as kids. None of these things are things that are foreign to adults at their core. They happen to have different tools for it. And they're not even that different. How many adults are on TikTok now, right? Just show of hands. How many of you adults have a TikTok account?
I saw it back there.
I've got a few. How many of you adults scroll TikTok without a TikTok account? You know, it's one of those things that they're a little foreign. What they're going through is different in the way it is. We were able to maybe escape more of the lasting effects of some of this stuff, so, you know, but none of it is that foreign to us, really. And it doesn't have to be that we're always talking to the kids about it. This is another big thing that kind of is from what I was talking about earlier. We don't have to talk to the kids about it. They can't understand yet. You can talk to them through your balloon of faith. I mean, I've got a, you know, as of today, a 4-year-old, and I can't tell him anything. I mean, he, a few weeks ago, was playing with some friends, and they got in a wagon crash, and he broke his collarbone, and now I'm telling him, like, buddy, you can't climb. What's the first thing he wants to do? Climb. Buddy, you can't climb. He wants to climb. So what do? We as adults talk to one another. How can we support him not climbing? Maybe we don't take a family trip to the indoor playground or the outdoor playground, or, you know, we as adults talk about how do we keep how do you keep your 4-year-old from doing things he shouldn't do? And again, as we reflect on it among ourselves, and then above that even, as we talk to God and pray to God for our 4-year-olds or 14-year-olds or 24-year-olds, they're going to understand that those conversations are happening. They're going to want to follow the example we're setting, and ultimately we're going to solve a lot more by, in a loving way, talking to one another about what kids are dealing with in a way that's empathetic and sympathetic to the lives they live and the struggles they have that, you know, ultimately we foisted on them, so.
All right, thank you. My dear panelists, I'm going to ask you, I have 10 minutes, and I want to exhaust this audience's questions. So, again, we'll try to go rapid fire.
Vagelos, Boca Raton. The camps are worth their weight in gold. From the camps that my daughters attended in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, in South Carolina, unbelievable. Ionian Village, unbelievable. They are worth their weight in gold. When the kids get back, the kids need to feel that it's their church. It's not our church. At St. Mark's, we needed bushes to be planted. We very easily could have gone into our pocket and paid to have someone plant the bushes. We bought the bushes, and we had the Goyans put the bushes in. Then they wanted to come back every single Sunday to see how their bush was growing in their church. And these students have gone to college, and they come back from college because they're looking at their bush that they planted at their church to see how it's doing. Now for the altar boys, we give them black robes. We have them involved in the altar. Well, that's just up until high school. No, we have them involved as college students and even postgraduate. And we find things that they can do, whether it's volunteering for the live stream ministry, Sunday school teaching, different activities, because it's their church and they take the ownership of it. But it all starts at camp. And the camps are unbelievable because they put that in there. What I'm saying, and I was with Holy Trinity in Westfield, we always just used to pay people to do things. We had the money to do it, but that's the wrong thing. We want them to devote their time, their talent. Yeah, they can use our treasure, but their time and talent because it's their church. And if we start instilling this thing, you're not going to lose parishioners. We didn't lose parishioners during COVID. We gained parishioners. Our churches now are overfilled. They're overstuffed. So that's the way we do it. I mean, we have the Greek festival and we tell people, look under the dome. You get a chance to peek under the dome. And we'll get 10, 12 converts. Now we're up to 15, 20 converts. It's by making it their church. and by not always paying for things, but having people do it. Or live streaming to wire the church, all volunteers. No one had any experience pulling telephone cables. We showed them how to do it, but it's all volunteers, and they did it. So the more we can get their time and their talent, the more they believe and know that it is their church.
Thank you. That's a beautiful example.
And I would also, if I may, just really quickly, what I said in my presentation, get them to do it and do it with them. Because otherwise, it can come off as child labor. You know what I mean? Serve with them, because honestly, if we didn't have the kids there, we'd be doing it ourselves, right? So do those chores and do that love of the home together. That's all I ask. Okay. But yes, you're right.
Hello. Presbytera Zoe Dinas, Archangel Michael, Campbell, Ohio. Thank you for all your resource information and everything you have out there, and we're having a lot of conversations right now about kind of revitalizing the ministry in our church, and I've looked up all the resources, and I think we need to start, using some of your ideas. But I love the idea of the intergenerational approach and the service, because that engages people, and I find that when the youth are involved in service, that it's very effective, and it really brings them to that they're really living out their faith that way. But here's my question. This whole idea of intergenerational, I love that, and the family ministry and the church family ministry. So how can we integrate everything so that we can have a kind of an intergenerational, let's say, opportunity for encounter, like something organized. I know you love that spontaneous thing, but let's say, we organize something with a plan, and how can we implement something like that, like integrate all these ideas for intergenerational church family encounter? I mean, besides visiting the people, which I take the kids, visit the elderly, but like, let's say an event, an encounter, a church event.
One of the new things I recently started with that exact problem in mind. We started doing trivia after church on Sundays. Not church trivia, because it has some church trivia, but it's general knowledge trivia. So it's got sports trivia, it's got trivia that only kids will know. So like I had a visual round, and you had to name all the famous hats. And one was like a kalimaki, one was Blippi's hat. If any of you guys know Blippy, you know Blippy. But it's that sense of, okay, we're gonna put you together and we're gonna have you do rounds of trivia together. And in between, there's all this time where they're sitting there together and they're talking about the questions. They weren't sure, and they put their heads together, and the 10 of them, 4-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 80-year-olds, and I had questions that were aimed at just the seniors, and it was hilarious. Really, like our Greek seniors got really into some of those questions, and the kids had no idea, and they're talking about stuff, and they're interacting with one another, and we're not in a rush to get out of there. We're gonna do it again in the fall. We're gonna put a football game on the TV screen. We're gonna order pizza, and we're gonna sit around on a Sunday, because thank God, again, I've inherited a parish where they don't really want to leave. They just want to be there all day. So if I can have them till 4 or 5 o'clock, I can have them till 4 or 5 o'clock. And they'll sit around and they'll be together as a family. But to kind of create, even intentionally, those things that don't have, I know we often are setting our sights on outcomes and ROI, return on investment, and just trying to get a sense of like, I'm putting this money into it, what am I getting out of it? Just to create those spaces where we can mingle in long format and be present, and it not be, I mean, it can be a dance sometimes, but not all the time, because often there isn't talking there. So anyway, to find ways that truly just give people the opportunity to be together, and it's that kind of semi-organic approach.
Alexis?
Presbytera, I would recommend that you make a plan, and then that's clear to your ministry leaders, and you say, we want to create a more intergenerational feel in this parish. And so part of your plan may be, let's have 5 intergenerational, events this year. And don't add things, but like for Philopticos meeting in October, instead of their typical meeting, try to tweak it so it's intergenerational. Or go to your Goyans and say, in November, instead of what we usually do with Goya, what would y'all like to do with the older adults? And so maybe attempt 4 or 5 of those as a plan for the year and let that ministry plan it, so you're not creating a whole new intergenerational ministry.
Great, thanks, Alexis. Kathy?
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Pappas from Houston, Texas, and we are super fortunate because we don't really have to plan much because we have a designated clergy, Father Estrato. Shout out to Denai and baby Stephanie who are watching, because they have organized all that for us. You know, there's things, and Father Michael, under his direction, from little kids all the way to married people, families, we have it kind of all in place. Our problem in our metropolis is we have some communities that are tiny, that don't have even enough to have a Goya. There's maybe 1 or 2 Goyans in the parish. So what are some things that we could do as a metropolis to incorporate a small parish in that has a lot of land mass between us to give them the same experience? We have a basketball tournament we encourage them to come to, but on a daily level, they really don't have much.
Yeah, the challenge for the metropolis is not being in driving distance from one community to the other, so there is a big distance.
I'm first going to say get every parish a Magoulias. You've got one, I've got one. Getting a parish a Magoulias always helps.
You know, I think that it's about having key people, but also sometimes, whether it's a small parish or a parish that just doesn't have anything yet, we put the weight on one person, and it's like giving a 30-ounce tomahawk steak to a baby with no teeth, right? You expect that person to be able to do all of the work, and that's why we keep saying, if you notice, I didn't say, parents, it's your responsibility to keep your kids engaged in the church. I never once said that. We talked about families and whatever as part of it, but so what I would say to a smaller parish is, if you don't have a significant group of, like, if you don't have all Goyans, if you don't have all, let's say, hope or joy, whatever you have, it might be that theirs is family ministry, which means that they're going to plan family events, whether it's going to the park, whether it's, you know, planning a potluck together where the parents can hang out and they have something for the kids to do, whatever it is, to start to have those young people engaged with one another and the parents supporting one another. Now, if you're talking about maybe a parish that is a larger and they do have definitive age groups, but they don't have anything going, I really do think it's great to have a youth director. It's great. But if you don't have people working with that person, it will fail. It's very typical. I'm an oddity in more ways than one, but most youth workers on a parish level burn out at 2 or 3 years because everything at the parish is put on their shoulders instead of the parish taking that responsibility for formation as a community. Not just the priest, not just the youth director. So what would I say? Make teams. One of the parishes in the Midwest, in Ohio, in the metropolis of Detroit, they created ministry teams and they focused them on worship, witness, fellowship, and service. And not only did they have adults as leaders of those ministry teams, but they put Goyans. So the Goyans and the adult advisors were working together. Again, joint leadership and working together, right? So that it wasn't, again, the responsibility. You do have to have a key person, that's fine, but it's not the responsibility of the entire, like one person, the entirety of the youth ministry on their shoulders. I don't know if that's helpful, and I think it would really be about the parish itself and meeting with that parish and saying, what resources do you have? Who do you have here? What's your demographic? And then let's start from there. Hopefully that's helpful.
And Kathy, I would even say, I recall growing up and having, we couldn't do it every month and every week, but whether it was a ski trip or it was something on a quarterly basis, I'm not talking about the mega events, I'm not talking about basketball and dance, but where communities came together and they've become lifelong friends of the parishes that, again, we couldn't do something on a weekly basis, but maybe it was a quarterly basis. with that, we're at 4:30. Fortunately, we've exhausted the questions. I wanted to thank everybody for, on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon in San Diego. Wish you all a wonderful evening with the clergy family dinner. For the rest of us that have a free evening to enjoy San Diego and be with friends and others. But thank you all for being here. And of course, thank you to our panel, Alexis, Father Nico, Eva.
And thank you to our moderator, Steve, who helped put this all together and it made our team whole. So thank you, Steve, for all your help. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
It's okay, go ahead. I don't know if that one's rolling yet. Is that rolling?
Amongst ourselves.
We have out there, and we're having a lot of conversations right now about kind of revitalizing the ministry in our church. And I've looked up all the resources, and I think we need to start, using some of your ideas.